We're going to start off with what it is and why it works. We're going to look at some channels for content marketing that you may or may not thought of, choosing those channels for yourself, depending very much on your target audience, and how you might plan that sort of thing out when it comes to how to do content marketing for your startup or business. So first of all, what is it? What is this content marketing thing we're talking about? It's all about the art of attracting visitors through your content online instead of through advertising. So the defined difference between advertising and content marketing. Advertising, you pay for it. It gets placed into feeds on social networks or perhaps to the top of Google or as pre-roll and mid-roll videos on YouTube. Whereas content marketing is what you might regard as organic material. It's the sort of stuff that you put together in social media posts, blogs, that kind of thing. It's important because it plays into what I think is the most famous and most vital process in marketing. And that's the process of know, like, and trust. Now, let's explain what that means so much. Knowing is getting people to know you, getting someone to understand and know who you are and what you're about. The like factor is, well, if you can't like someone without knowing them first. So if they know who you are, know what you're about, and have recognized you on, say, on social media or even on a television show, then it's easier for them to become more accustomed to seeing you in those places, becoming more accustomed to seeing what you're about. So they begin to like you. But it doesn't mean that you're going to trust them necessarily. I don't trust everybody that I follow on LinkedIn, and I wouldn't imagine that everyone that follows on LinkedIn for me either necessarily trust me yet. Trust comes from a very specific process of moving from them getting to know you, to beginning to like you, to beginning to trust you. Now, how's that work in the terms of content marketing? It's very much all about using short form content to let people know who you are through social media posts, reels, TikToks, YouTube shorts, short interviews, podcast appearances, so guesting on other people's podcasts, anything that's short, a few minutes, up to about 10 minutes. After you get from that 10-minute mark, we're talking about repeated mere exposure. And I call it mere exposure because of the phenomenon of mere exposure. The phenomenon of mere exposure states that just by seeing you often and being exposed to you more often, people tend to trust you more. They see more credibility in you. It's like repeating a lie until it's the truth. We don't want to go quite to that degree. We're not going to go down politicians' paths here. What we will do, though, is cover the fact that we're talking about the ability for people to see you multiple times in order to become familiar with you, to become a bit of a rapport, having a rapport with you and having some level of credibility for what you're saying you're doing, giving you a chance to not just prove once that you know what you're doing, but over and over and over. So the know and the like, how about the trust? The trust comes from your long form content. That's your blogs, your articles, your white papers, your theses, YouTube videos, podcasts of your own, going and making longer things that cover more of your expertise in a more long form way. By long form, I just simply mean more than 10 minutes when it comes to, say, a YouTube video, or more than 300 words when it comes to a blog or an article on your website. So we take them from short-term content, which is mainly to get attention. We then repeat that attention grabbing behavior on social platforms, mostly by repeatedly producing things that get the attention of that particular target customer we've got. And then we back that up by long form content that's usually off the platform. So you lead people off YouTube, off social media, off the reels and the TikToks and the LinkedIn posts, over to longer form content that lives on your website, perhaps on a Medium profile. If you're using Medium as a place to put your expertise, it could be onto your YouTube channel where you have a channel full of items that are more than 10 minutes long, or it could be letting them onto a webinar, a live webinar like this one you're on now, which then explains what your expertise is in a lot more detail than you can fit in your average social media post. So at its most basic, organic content on social media is short form content. So that's, and even that is content marketing of a sort. So in this case, feeling happy and blessed in the winds of sunset on this paradise beach could be someone selling swimwear or a location or a particular fashion brand. So that could be content marketing, a free Instagram post that people don't have to pay to access and you don't have to pay to have on that platform. But at its most complex, at its most high and long form factor, it could be then something like a thesis from a university. The trouble is that we have a lot of content floating around the internet today, and a lot of people are starting to rebel against it. I won't say a lot of people in the marketing world are saying, look, we could just keep producing all this content, but seriously, there is so much of it. Like we're talking about 328.77 million terabytes of data created every day. And how much of that is actual social media? Well, let's take a look at what some of the social media stuff is. We're finding 300 million photos are posted per day on social media. 510,000 comments are made per minute on social media. 293,000 posts created per minute on social media. That means that if you go over an entire day, so how many minutes in a day, times that by the 293,000 posts that are put on social media per day globally, and this is earlier this year, so it's possibly increased slightly from there. You're talking about such limitless content that can never reach every person on the planet, which gets you thinking really, when there's that much stuff floating around, that much content being created, it makes you, wonder why you're not being seen as often as you'd like to be seen on Facebook or somewhere like that, right? You think, well, why isn't anyone seeing my stuff? Why aren't I getting the likes? Why aren't I getting the shares and the comments? That's largely why, because of this many things that are happening every day online on social media. So content kind of has to be of a higher quality. It still has to be something that's going to stretch out a little bit more towards your target customer than simply saying, hey, it's Throwback Thursday. Here's a photo from 2023 or 22 that we might have had. That kind of stuff is very lazy content and is treated as such, and is you get the rewards for it. Don't they say play stupid games, win stupid prizes? It's kind of like that, rubbish in, rubbish out. If you're going to put rubbish posting in and just do it because that's your job to put posting on social media, then you can expect very poor results. There's a great divide between the quality and the quantity. And I would say even more so than just quality and quantity, because honestly, sometimes low quality or lo-fi stuff can do very well on social media. I think TikTok and Reels and even YouTube Shorts are proof that you don't have to be perfect and slicked to have really good stuff appearing on those channels. But I would say that it's also a bit about relevance and irrelevance. The fact that we may produce lots of content, but we don't stop to think from a design thinking perspective, does anyone care about this topic I'm about to talk about? Is this topic within my area of expertise? Do I have credibility within this topic? And is it relevant? Is it even relevant to what my customers go through? Does this impact their day? Does this make them look at it and go nod their head and go, yes, I can relate to that? Or is it just utterly irrelevant crap like it's our staff member's birthday today, when no one really cares? We barely care about our own birthdays these days, let alone celebrating the birthdays of the staff of a company we don't really know that well. So that would say, I would say that less than 5% of all content that goes out every day on any social platforms is of any kind of quality, and less than 20% will be of any kind of relevance to the people that are following that particular page or that particular profile. And why does it get that bad? Well, quite simply because we don't really want to spend a lot of time creating content. We want to just get it out, systemize it, automate it, make it so it's really simple to get going. And that's where we kind of hit a few hiccups. We automate it and make it simple to a point where it becomes irrelevant to the kind of people we're trying to reach, the people we're trying to serve. So why is this content marketing beast effective when it feels like it's actually not effective? Well, it gets effective when you get relevant, when you get matching the people, getting them to know you, getting them to like you, moving them onto an area of trust. And it all comes down to these three steps. We want to let people know that they're great. We need them to have a chance to get to like you. Great. But then getting them to trust you means they're getting into that position where they can actually buy from you. Content marketing works because it gives you free traffic to your best stuff. So the best performing stuff that you have on social media has to go somewhere. So if you're producing social media just for the visuals, just for the feel-good factor, you're already failing. What you need to do is use that content channel, no matter whether it's social media, a blog site, your own website, a YouTube channel, if it's a webinar, you do it all because it needs to drive to the next step. I do this webinar here because the idea is to educate the startup community in Northern Australia particularly, but the whole of Australia as well, on little bits and pieces they can do better to be able to become better entrepreneurs. Better entrepreneurs produce better potential businesses and ideas. And let's face it, that's what we like to be able to talk to, is people who are developing great ideas so we can then develop them into better businesses and potentially invest in them as well. It encourages loyalty and further engagement. You don't really want to engage with cringeworthy stuff. You don't really want to further engage with people who are annoying, irritating, always trying to sell you something. In fact, you could go all the way around. If you're walking down a mall in any city in Australia and somebody starts, trying to get your attention to fill out something, to get some donations or to sell you something, you tend to veer around them, right? The internet has a version of that veering around as well. And it's called completely scrolling past them, not even noticing them because it looks like an ad, smells like an ad, quacks like a duck. It's probably going to be an ad, right? So we're talking about the ability for you to produce something that encourages people to engage further with you. Remember, we need to get them off the social platforms and onto our own places, into our email boxes, into our LinkedIn Messenger boxes as well. So what channels do we use when we're working on this magical content marketing machine? Well, we start off with social media. It's the best, most well-known place to start. But the problem is you need an audience. You cannot just start posting and go, yeah, that's it for me. I've posted, I've done my job. I'll walk away now. And if it doesn't perform, doesn't matter. I still get paid anyway. That's not the attitude you can have with social. Social media is an investment of time, an investment of expertise, an investment of experimentation, an investment sometimes of money. But really, I don't spend a cent on any social media platform apart from being verified on one or two of them. And that's nothing to do with the posting. That's to do with putting across some degree of credibility, or at least verification that that is me on that channel, because we know that so many people get there's false channels out there, fake people out there pretending to be people they are not. The problem is you need to build an audience, and the only way you build an audience for any channel on social media is you have to interact on social media like a real human being. I do not get anything through to people on LinkedIn every day until I've gone around and interacted with people first. Now, unfortunately, this morning I ran out of time because I was going meeting to meeting. So I posted something, a really good post, I thought, and it's barely got any engagement, any kind of readership. It's not reaching very far, simply because I didn't do the work beforehand to make sure the audience and the feed was primed for my next piece of content. And so, therefore, if I go the lazy route, such as not interacting with all the people on my feed in such a way that I make them aware that I'm around and about, and they click on my profile and see my latest post, well, then I can't expect my post to go far. There is a direct correlation with how much you engage with your feeds and with the people who follow you, and the amount of people who are going to see you and interact with you and engage with you. You are not entitled to an audience. You are not entitled to engagement. You are not entitled to people to click on your link until you've done a bit of work for it. And that goes beyond just simply putting together a social media post and running away. You need to do the hard work of actually being, funnily enough, social on social media. Funny that, huh? Your blogs and your articles and your written reports, they create a sense that you know what you're talking about, that you are credible, that you have the chops to be able to talk about this, that you have some kind of authority to be able to talk about this, that you really know what you're doing. Now, you can't pick up a lot of that in social media. Perhaps you can write a post that gives a little bit of an instruction about what it is you do and how other people may do that. You might share reports that show that you understand the industry in a specific way. You may even have content on social media that's a little bit contrary or somehow shows how you think differently. But there's only so much you can fit in a tiny box that people scroll past on their phones. To get that attention, you can't be going into detail on social media, but you need to go into detail somewhere so that people think that you actually know what you're doing. your blogs, your articles, your longer form YouTube stuff. That's the stuff where that happens. So you've got to have some kind of routine where you're writing longer material as well that people can be referred to from your social media posts. You can link to those posts. You can have them linked as feature articles. In LinkedIn, you can even make them into newsletters that go out to people who then follow you every week. A newsletter itself is actually a really good example of that. Long format videos of over 10 minutes long on YouTube or even on TikTok these days. They could be explainers, how to. They could be a lesson, a webinar that you've recorded, then put onto YouTube, like I do with these Darwin Innovation Hub ones. They demonstrate your expertise. They give you the option to be able to show people that you're for real, and particularly in the form of a webinar where it's live. And yeah, this one will be recorded as well, but you're essentially producing this live. If you're a dummy and you don't know what you're doing, or you're lying about this topic, or you know absolutely nothing about it, you'll be umming and ahhing and stopping and having all sorts of problems through that webinar that you just cannot convince anyone that you know what you're doing, because you clearly are nervous and don't know what you're doing, and you may not know that topic particularly well. What I tend to find is that people who do webinars that are full of text, so for instance, from the top to the bottom, they could have over 300 words on every single slide. They're the people who really don't know what they're doing, because they're essentially reading what's on the screen out to you. People who know what they're doing will have a few words, and then they'll talk to those points for a minute or two. Webinars are an even longer format, and they allow participation. So I've recently cut my webinars down from 1 hour to half an hour, simply because I find that's easier for people to take a lunch break in the middle of the day once a week and do these, rather than a whole hour. Otherwise, they take the whole hour. That's probably their whole lunch break. Even these days, many people are on a 30-minute lunch break. So having a webinar allows people to ask questions. You've got some kind of participation in there, and they give you even more time to show that expertise. Like I was saying, if someone knows what they're talking about, they can talk through a webinar without the ums, the ahs, the pauses, and the big thinking breaks and the big thinking words and the filler words. They know what they're doing. They're going to rock a webinar. Podcasts of your very own then provide quite a regular point of access to an audience. So that's also very loyal access to an audience. I've found that I've got about 5,000 downloads a day when I'm doing my podcast, when I should be. Been about a month since I did the last episode, taking a bit of a break because it's been going for 5 years. I've got nearly 400 episodes now. So it's time to take a bit of a month's break, reformat the podcast, come back bright and fresh with something new and much more valuable than what was going out there. But your own podcasts provide yet another point of credibility. You may have a blog, you may have a YouTube channel. Having a podcast then adds yet another point. Whew, it's all sounding like a lot of work. That is a hell of a lot of work. And realistically, you can't do it all. Even I have had to take a rest from the podcast for a bit, because there's so much content I have to do every week. I'm getting up and doing a LinkedIn, Facebook post, an Instagram post. I'm going out and putting stuff on Twitter or X or whatever it's called now, over on Threads. There's so much to do when it comes to content, with you building that credibility with an audience. But who honestly has that much time? I work in this field. So for me, I've got automations and tools that help me do that more effectively and efficiently. But the average person doesn't. So what you need to do is start out with who your target audience is and the platforms that they use. There's a very good chance that if you're producing skincare creams, you are not going to have an audience that's going to be particularly impressed with you over on a podcast. But having demonstration videos that are short and sharp on something like YouTube Shorts or TikTok or Instagram Reels will be far more powerful than a 10-minute video on YouTube that's explaining the ins and outs of every ingredient, how it's made, how it's sourced, how it's put together, and then how it's packaged through how to use it. It just isn't a cohort that needs that much detail. But if you are a software as a service provider, you're producing your own software, then those 10-minute explainers could be the difference between your audience knowing what you are, being able to act upon what you are, and then buy you, or they just go, this is too hard. There's no instructions to be found anywhere. I'm just going to avoid this altogether. So start with that target audience. Understand what they need. I know everybody keeps saying this every time we talk about marketing or any sort of product in design thinking or in the building of a startup, that you need to start with that target audience. But you really do need to start with that target audience. Understand how they work, what platforms they use, where they spend their time, and what they need. Then understand how you can fit into that, how you can reasonably do this with the skills and the resources and the nous and the experience that you have. How can you put together something that works in that platform? Don't try to make YouTube videos if doing video is so far beyond your skill set and time restrictions that you cannot even think of doing it. I started on a podcast first because for me, editing a podcast and recording it was so much easier than trying to do video. I also worked with webinars because for me, a webinar is a much easier way for me to present the information than a standard high production value YouTube channel. It just simply doesn't make sense to me in terms of time and efficiency. Now, do I get 1 million views per episode? Absolutely not. But I'm also not targeting 1 million people. I'm targeting people who have an interest in entrepreneurship, digital skills, startups, and then working into a Northern Australian context. That's a niche within a niche within a niche. It's not going to appeal to everybody. And I don't feel the need to. I also need to do what's within my skills. Social media, great at that. No problem whatsoever. Video, it's a stretch. Podcasting, I used to be a radio guy. So podcasting me is like, yep, straight off, I can do that. No problem at all. But there's some things that you're not going to do well. It could be writing a blog, could be hell for you. Don't do it. Move to the things that you can do well first and see who is already out there serving content to your audience. If you have a software as a service product that you're developing and you're putting out into the market, then see who else is doing that. Go and see what HubSpot does. They've got fantastic stuff online. They've also got a massive marketing and content development team because they know that most of their results come through either referrals or from SEO, from search engine optimization in Google. So they need to have lots of material to get lots of those results. So how do we go about making your plan, helping you to put together the content marketing plan that you can do? Well, as we would probably say a few times, set those realistic goals for how much you're going to do and what you want to achieve. I recently did a conference in Brisbane for the Kitchen and Bathroom Design Institute, and the content I kept getting all the time, the feedback was, I just don't have time to do all this stuff. There's so much stuff to do on social media. If I did all that all day, I wouldn't get any actual design work done. I wouldn't build a bathroom. I wouldn't build a single kitchen because I'll be too busy just trying to manage my social media. So what you need to do, because I'm pretty sure you'll be in the same bucket as those designers, set realistic goals. If it is getting I would go further than just one post on social media every week. I'd go try for 2. And if you can put together 2 social media posts in a week, that's a great start. Do that for a month. Get consistent over a month. Then add more stuff. But work out what it is you want to achieve. If you want to get to 1 million followers by the end of the year, you have to get cracking on producing all kinds of content. But if what you'd like to do is just connect it a little bit better with just 5 new clients or 5 new potential leads per month, then do something that matches that. You don't have to go to the ends of the earth to get those 5 leads. You might just have to produce something that encourages conversation. And there's all sorts of guidance I could give you or anyone else could give you who works in this space on how to get the most out of social media to do that. I'd say also plan out the topics you're going to talk about in advance and set a schedule. I have a particular technique I use, which is based on 39 posts every 13 weeks that I then repeat over and over and over. Now, not for my personal profile on LinkedIn, but for, say, for instance, client social media presences, my own business social media presences. I don't have the time to go to all 7 of my lines of business producing glittering, like amazing, sparkling social media presences every single day of the week. I just don't have that time. But at the beginning of the year, when I've had some time off around New Year's Day, really, because I don't drink, so I don't get hungover, so I can sit there and write out a year's worth of this material, which is great. It's produced well, looks consistent, produces a great brand effect that I'm looking for, but teaches a little something every single day. That for me is a much more ideal way of than having to come every day and come up with a great idea that day. And that particular process, I've got some information about that on my LinkedIn profile, but I'll also, talk about that in an upcoming conference in Sydney. And I'll then bring that back to here and we'll talk about how to do a bit better with the social media by putting limits on how much you're doing with it. You'll never regret planning. Trust me, you'll never regret the planning. I've come to September now in 2023, and the work I did on January 1, 2023, I do not regret that because I know that all my other lines of business have got consistent material going out there. Finally, make sure you have a way of measuring whether this stuff you're doing is actually doing anything. Don't do social media if it has no value to your business. Don't spend time doing content marketing if it achieves nothing, or at least measure it. Use the SMART goals. There's specific goals that are measurable, achievable. There's something which is time bound. So you can say within 3 months, I expect this result. And if it's not getting that result, you adjust. So you say, okay, I'll adjust and do this slightly differently. I might write a shorter article with more graphics involved in it. Whatever you need to do to make those small changes that could make a very big impact on the measurement towards that. And the measurement could be audience. A measurement could be the amount of leads you're getting. The measurement could be how many signups you've got, how many sales you've made. So make those, make it so that you are actually justifying the time you're spending on social media. Social media doesn't get a free pass when it comes to the hours of your day. It doesn't get a free pass just because, oh, it's social media, that's what we must do, tick that box. It still has to earn its keep. You do not do any kind of marketing, content marketing or otherwise, unless at some point that can be measured back to having some positive impact on your business. So let's recap this before we go. First up, we wanted to look at the fact that content marketing is worth doing because it's free to do, but it does require some kind of effort in order to do it well and to get some results. Content marketing then, if it's done without a plan, can get a little weird. So having that plan, you'll never regret having that plan. Making sure that you're planning out saying 3 posts a week over 13 weeks, 39 posts. That gets repeated every 13 weeks, which is a quarter of a year. That can be a plan that really works for you. When you don't have a plan, you're scratching about for new topics to do every day, things are going to get weird and very inconsistent and messy and lazy, and you're just going to eventually give up because you don't see any reason why you should continue doing it. With content marketing, always work within your skills and resources that you have. You can always learn new skills. If it's absolutely vital for you to produce video, you can go and learn how to do that. Use tools like YouTube's own built-in YouTube Studio, or one of the tools I love to use, Flixia. Flixia is an online video editing software, or one that's free is called CapCut. It's got some limitations in it, but it's a damn good project. You can just take pieces of your video, slice it up so you can slice out the bits where you made lots of mistakes and add effects and different things like subtitles, and you've got something that works really well for you. But at the moment, just getting started out, work within the skills and resources you've got. If you can write, if you can record articles and into podcasts, do that, but only within the skills and resources you have. Get those right, then go off and learn new skills. And remember, the flow of getting to know you, getting to like you, and eventually trusting you enough to make that sale. If you remember every piece of marketing you do, whether it's content marketing, social media marketing, radio, television, whatever you're going to do, remember that you need people to first recognize who you are, to get to know you. And then they get to like you through the phenomenon of mere exposure. Just merely seeing you enough time makes you more credible, which makes you more trustworthy. And that trustworthiness is why people will choose you over the other options in the marketplace.